Out of the 9 races held so far in 2024, Max Verstappen has won 6, 2/3 of them. But, as team principal Christian Horner has pointed out, Red Bull must not be under the illusion that this guarantees the 2024 titles are already secured. The rivals are definitely closer to the performance of the RB20, and Max Verstappen had to use all his talent both at the Imola circuit in the Emilia-Romagna Grand Prix and in the Canadian Grand Prix at the 4.361-kilometer Circuit Gilles Villeneuve in Montreal, to prevail on both occasions over Lando Norris's McLaren, which in Montreal could lament the missed pit stop under safety car that saw a strong lead turn into a return to the track in third position behind George Russell's Mercedes. The series now heads to the Spanish Grand Prix in Barcelona, a circuit that will provide a rather accurate picture of the balance of power on the track. Red Bull is expected to return to the performance levels seen in Japan and China, but in the meantime, the competition has brought updates to the track that, especially in the case of McLaren, have seen the MCL38 grow significantly, proving to be a car capable of adapting to all types of tracks, as evidenced by the 3 second places achieved at Imola and in Canada with Norris and in Monaco with Piastri. The fact that the competition is now at the level of the RB20 has also led to some nervousness from Red Bull regarding the front wings of McLaren, Ferrari, and Mercedes. According to journalist Michael Schmidt in a video analysis for the German outlet Automotor und Sport, since Imola, there have been heated discussions triggered by Red Bull about the flexing of the front wing, primarily of McLaren, but also of Ferrari and lastly of Mercedes. Red Bull was the magician of the flexible front wing, and now that the regulations have tightened significantly in this area, the Milton Keynes team is showing some nervousness about the behavior of the front aerodynamic appendages of their main rivals. Red Bull claimed that the McLaren wing in particular bends significantly too much, also Ferrari. And now Mercedes have followed suit with the bending, according to Automotor und Sport. Red Bull, Mercedes, and Scuderia Ferrari. The top teams are manipulating the rigidity of the front wing profiles to circumvent the TD018 directive. Once the car passes the FIA's static tests, it is considered legal for the rest of the weekend. No car has failed the test so far. However, this system is also very difficult to fine-tune, because in fast corners, you absolutely do not want the wing to flex, as lowering the incidence also reduces the amount of upwash created. In other words, it decreases the front-end downforce by a few points. Moving on to specifics, let's analyze some teams at the center of this contentious issue. In the following image, we see the front wing compared, a high-speed straight section and a slower one during a cornering phase. In this case, we refer to the Mercedes W15, specifically the front, which, as we had already analyzed in past seasons, is divided into 2 parts. One portion is shorter and attaches to the nose, while the other, larger portion is attached to the end plate. The point of contact in question is not fixed, and the 2 sections can slide over each other. As speed increases, the airflow over this part of the F1 car generates force on both profiles. Obviously, on the longer portion, the value of the moment at the contact point with the other part of the wing will be greater. As mentioned, the 2 parts are free to slide relative to each other, and therefore, at a certain speed, we can notice how the wider profile lowers, reducing the frontal area of the element. Consequently, the resistance created decreases by a few points, temporarily generating a higher aerodynamic penetration coefficient. Examining the 2 enlargements reveals a significant difference in terms of wing incidence, where at low speeds the component is almost in its standard rest configuration. When the car reaches a certain speed, the incidence in the outermost area decreases as the element lowers, producing a lower drag level. In other words, a new equilibrium configuration is obtained, where the 2 portions of the wing have the same incidence and the forces balance out. Red Bull is the Formula One team that has made accusations against the German team, but they are no different, if not worse. Meanwhile, we see how the wing design on the RB20 is almost identical to that of Mercedes, with the same 2-part division. Through the same comparison, it is seen how the 2 configurations are more dissimilar. At low speeds, the incidence of the larger portion is very high, whereas when aerodynamic force is added to the equation, the incidence of the outer part of the wing decreases and even reaches a value lower than the inner portion. Ferrari also tries to implement this functionality, but does so in a decidedly less invasive way. The division of the wing remains the same, also because the teams adjust the incidence by acting precisely on the outermost portion of the wing. The difference in the case of the Maranello team is significantly less pronounced. Examining the onboard footage from the Canadian Grand Prix, it seems that the two SF24 cars benefit from less wing flexibility. This is why the equilibrium configuration, with and without aerodynamic load, shows a less marked difference. Another paper battle seems to be taking shape in Formula One. As we know, every minute detail can significantly affect the competitiveness of the cars. Red Bull feels the pressure and, after investigating with its team of photographers, is trying to draw FIA's attention to McLaren, Ferrari, and Mercedes. This issue is somewhat amusing since the Milton Keynes team uses the same setup. For Ferrari, as mentioned, things are very different. We can only wait to see what happens, bearing in mind that yet another technical battle might emerge. Mercedes showed a performance in Canada that had not been seen throughout the season, and for the first time this year, they managed to compete for the win against Red Bull and McLaren. The RB20, with Max Verstappen as its star, had not been the unbeatable car in the recent races. Christian Horner commented that Max was incredible, noting that the McLarens were the fastest on intermediates, but Red Bull managed to avoid mishaps despite the tricky conditions. Red Bull has seen McLaren and Ferrari close in after starting 2024, similarly to 2023, and Mercedes is also working to reduce the gap to the top three teams. At Milton Keynes, one side of the garage is celebrating with Verstappen, while Sergio Perez continues to face difficulties. In Spain, Perez will have to serve a three-position penalty imposed by the race steward for continuing to drive with a heavily damaged car after the Montreal incident. Horner remarked that it was a horrible weekend for Checo, but fortunately, Ferrari did not score points, so Red Bull did not lose too many points in the constructors' standings. At Red Bull, close attention is being paid to the work being done by their direct competitors, with a battle at the top that always hinges on details. According to Automotor und Sport, the Milton Keynes team has particularly focused on the front wings of the RB20's rivals. The engineers at Milton Keynes, under the supervision of Paul Monahan, have especially scrutinized the new front wing of Mercedes, introduced in Monaco and then fully endorsed for both drivers in Canada. An informal request has reportedly been made to the FIA's technical office to monitor the flexing occurring at the ends of the front wing and the nose of the W15. The new wing has always passed the static checks conducted by the FIA's technical bench, but it is evident that almost all teams manage to activate the flexing only within certain load ranges during a lap. According to various industry insiders, television images confirm that the new specification front wing of the W15 flexes more compared to the initial specification, which had been widely discussed as problematic for Mercedes. The issue of flexing has always been very prominent in the latest F1 technical regulations. Both in 2022 and 2023, the FIA intervened with updates to the technical regulations to mitigate the flexing of components such as floors and wings. In October, the technical office led by Nicolas Tombazis officially implemented Technical Directive Number 18 to mitigate the use of overly flexible composite carcasses for the front wing structure. The FIA issues directives and makes regulatory changes when there are justified elements that, according to the FIA, compromise safety.